Have you ever wondered why there's so many topics that humans should be aware of and openly spoken about, but mysteriously society never brings up those topics? Good morning and welcome to your audience. In this English conference, it is going to be discussed infantile pornography. My name is Janely Guzman and I'm going to be your moderator. To make a better use of your time, I'm going to explain the main points of this conference. Our guests are going to be answering 12 main questions related to infantile pornography. These questions are divided into, first, the definitions and different points of views. Second, we're going to dive in more into the topic using examples, clarifying doubts, and using different points of views as well. And third, and the last but the most important one, preventions and things you can do to help people that you think or know that are going through this difficult situation. At the end of this conference, we're going to have a space for the audience's questions that you might have, so I recommend you to take notes. So first, we're going to pray, so bow your heads and close your eyes. And this morning, dear Lord, we come to you with an open heart, mind, and soul, in order that you can speak to us and use these English conferences to enrich our knowledge in a way that you advise. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. So I hope that you're as excited as I am to meet our guests. So please, I would beg you to introduce yourself.
Good morning, my name is Ashley Diaz. I am an ambassador of ECPAT, which is a global network organization that works against sexual exploitation of children. I'm honored to be here in this conference to talk about this delicate but very important topic, and thank you for inviting me.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carlos Hernandez, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm here to explain you some and your attentions.
Hi, my name is Anthony Lasso. I am the pastor, and I am glad to be here. I am going to give an opinion through God's word.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kelly Umanya. I'm a social media manager, and also I want to give my opinion as a mother. Thank you for inviting me.
Good morning, my name is Griselda Vigil. I am a child psychologist. It is an honor to be here to share with you more about this interesting topic. Thank you.
As you can see, we have many professionals that are going to help us to understand better this topic. So we have a key Bible verse, which is Psalm 127:3, that says, "Children are a blessing and a gift from the Lord." Now let's start with the questions. This is an open one, so if possible, everyone can answer. What is infantile pornography?
This is a very important question because in order to answer the next one, we first need to define what is infantile pornography. Infantile pornography refers to any depiction through any medium of children being involved to engage in sexual explicit activities. Pornography includes photographs, recordings, and other visual depiction, and may be distributed through books, magazines, films, videos, computer discs, computer programs, and many other resources. Pornography may be considered explicit if it shows or presents images of nude children or seductive images of children, or it may also consist of images of children in sexual activities. The use of children in both ways implies sexual exploitation, which is a goal of our network of organizations to end this situation.
Federally, child pornography is any representation of a minor of any sex in sexually explicit conduct. Infantile pornography can be visual, descriptive representations of fiction, or even sound. Traditionally, child pornography is considered to be those filmic representations conducting either a child alone or with other children. Pornography is a difficult time to define. However, when it comes to child pornography, it is expressly defined as that is explicit sexually abuse. It is optional, but the protocol of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in the following terms define child pornography explicit in the Article 2. For this purpose of the protocol, child pornography is by any means and terms is a child engaged in explicit, real or simulated parts of a child primarily for the purpose sexually.
Well, as my partner says, the infantile pornography is a visual and auditive representation of sexuality, in this case, using kids under 18 years old. But I can add that the infantile pornography, it's distortionate or view in marriage, in sexual activity or sexual terms, and it affects us in our behavior. I can add too that the infantile pornography is a sin. But why is a sin? Well, it's a sin because if we go when God gave to Moses the 10 commandments, we can see in the seventh commandment that says, "You shall not commit adultery." So in this commandment, it clearly says us that we only can have sexual activity in the marriage as God established. And if you do out of the marriage, it is a sin. You are breaking a law, a commandment that God established.
Thank you so much. Now, let's go with the second question. That is for Ashley. You know that we even talk about pornography in general. So, Ashley, what are the types of infantile pornography?
There are several types of infantile pornography, but the main ones and the ones I'm going to briefly explain you are 5. The first one is expressive infantile pornography. It consists on the conduct developed in which children participate directly, being subject to filming or exhibition. The next one, literary infantile pornography. It consists of the representation of infantile pornography through literary or written means, in which there is no incorporation of images and sound of the children. The next one, it's kind of the opposite of the second one, because there is incorporation of images and sound of the children, and this is called visual infantile pornography. This pornography is distributed through visual means. Next one is audio infantile pornography. It consists of the reproduction of the voice of the child with sexual connotations. Mainly this type of pornography is relevant to visual infantile pornography. And the last one is technical infantile pornography. It is limited to the representation of children by adults who appear to be children through different technological instruments such as photo retouching, Photoshop, video filming, etc.
Thank you, Ashley. Now that we have the basic knowledge about infantile pornography, how is infantile pornography viewed under the law?
Well, according to the NCMEC, that is the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, estimates that about 20% of all the pornography in the internet contain images of child. Child pornography is illegal and is censored in most jurisdictions around the world. 94 of 187 Interpol member states have laws specifically addressing child pornography. In 2008, although this doesn't include nations that prohibit child pornography, because of those 94 countries that penalty the pornography, 58 criminalize the possession of child pornography regardless of intention to distribute it. Both the distribution of child pornography and possession are now criminal offense. In almost Western countries of Europe and almost in America and almost all the world, a broad movement is working to globalize the criminalization of child pornography, including major international organizations such as the United Nations, the European Commissions, and others. The producers of child pornography seek to avoid a prosecution by distributing their material across nation borders. Also, this problem is increasingly because of the being addressed with periodic arrest of arrested and suspects from various countries over the last few years.
Okay, now let's go to the next one. And the former question that Carlos answered is going to help us to contrast with this one. We saw how human judges pornography. So now, Anthony, what does God say about infantile pornography?
Well, if you see in the last times that for pornography in general, it's starting to become okay, to become normal to the society. But we have to ask, it's okay for God? Actually, it's not okay for God. As I mentioned, it is a sin. Two, I can add that there is a verse that say that you can do everything, but not everything it's good for you. In this case, the infantile pornography, you can watch, you can consume it, but it's good for you? No, because your view is going to get distortionate. The marriage, your behavior,
you can consume, dijo.
that
Pero dijo,
behavior,
"Is it good for you?"
that it can affect that behavior that you have with your wife or your husband. It just depends on the gender too. Two, I can say that the child are blessed by God. There is a story, an anecdote that says that the heavens are for the kids. But why are for the kids? Because they are innocent. They never are going to think something bad. They are blessed by God. God say us that we have to be as kids, and that gave more value to the kids, and use that ways also is a sin, and it is made worse because they are blessed by God. So in conclusion, I can say that God it's not agree with the infantile pornography. The infantile pornography affects affects the consumer and affects the producer or the child that are used to make this content.
There was a slightly difference, right? But a very determining factor is that God always fulfills what he says. But on the other hand, humans don't. Now, Griselda, what makes young people vulnerable to consume pornography?
Almost the 10% of internet pornography consumers are minors. Young people see porn as a documentary and not as a fictional movie. For this reason, porn has become a source of learning for young people who come to it to learn about sex. 3 out of the teenagers use the internet as the main source of sex education, followed by friends. This is totally incorrect since pornography should not be considered a source of learning since adolescents adopt incorrect patterns and behaviors about sexuality. Masturbation is also still the main reason why young people turn to pornography. This is mainly due to the fact that the sexual education that these young people receive does not satisfactorily resolve their doubts. For this reason, in my opinion, it is necessary to reform effective sexual education programs and broaden their perspective to interpersonal relationships.
Remember something important that she said? is that porn shouldn't be considered as a source of learning because it's false. It's just a lie. Now, social media and its uses are a very polemic topic. So let's ask our specialist, Kelly, does social media influence the consumption of pornography?
Yes, the social medias are based on the interest of its member. For example, if a girl is interested in makeup, she's going to follow accounts that are related to makeup. And this can be an advantage because the members with the same interests make groups, and some of the groups can talk about topics that are less common in society because of the embarrassment or the discomfort that they may cause. These topics are considered inappropriate because somehow they violate the society norms or the moral standard. An example of these topics can be the consumption of pornography, the use of drugs, excessive drinking, illegal hunting, eating disorder, any self-harming, or any addictive practice. And I want to clarify here is that the pornography is not just for boys, it's also for girls. The studies show that the 76% of the consumers are males and the other 24% are females. And another advantage of these social groups is that somehow they can change the perspective of a person. For example, if a boy is consuming drugs, he see an advertisement about the use of drugs, he can change his perspective about the use of drugs and how these drugs can damage.
I totally agree with everything that you said, Kelly, and I want to stress something important that you said, that porn is not only consumed by men, it's also consumed by women. And that is a very common thought that we have to change because it's not the reality. Now, Carlos, what crimes are related to infantile pornography?
Well, before explaining this, I'll tell you that federal laws prohibits the production, distribution, importation, reception, or possession of any image of pornography. A violation of federal child pornography law is a serious crime, and convicted offenders face fine and severe statutory penalties. The International CEOs works to deter and eradicate the production, distribution, and possession of pornography. These CEOs attorneys work with the High Technology Investigating Unit, that is the HTIU, and the most commonly mentioned that is the most prosecuted about this crime is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. The United States Attorney's Office throughout the country and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the NCMEC, their work is to vigorously combat this growing problem by investigating and prosecuting violators of federal laws. And in addition, CEOs attorneys work the law enforcement personnel to identify and rescue victims of child pornography from continued abuse. The use of the internet to commit child pornography often has blurred traditionally notions of jurisdictions. The CEOs maintain a coordinated national level law enforcement focus to help coordinate nationwide and investigation and initiatives. Furthermore, CEOs attorneys and HTIU computer forensic specialists travel all over the world to conduct and participate in training for investigators, law enforcement personnel, and others involved in efforts to investigate and prosecute child pornography offenders. CEOs also designs, implements, and supports law enforcement strategies, legislative proposals, and policy initiatives relating to federal child pornography laws. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Carlos, for explaining that so well. Now let's move to a more unknown term. So Ashley, what is the difference between infantile pornography and child erotics?
I've mentioned before the definition of infantile pornography, but I'm going to make emphasis with this. Infantile pornography refers to any depiction through any media of a children being involved or engaged in sexual explicit activities. Now, child erotics is defined as any material alluding to children serving an individual for sexual purposes. Child erotics includes toys, games, magazines, children's clothing, children's photographs, etc. We see then that there is a large quantity of material that can be considered as child erotics by the user, or literally any material can be considered that way without even having a pornographic character. The particularity of this child erotics lies in this, and the perception given to it by its user, meaning an individual who uses it for sexual purposes. It doesn't depend on the physical or objective features of the material, instead on the perspective given to it. So this is the main difference between infantile pornography and child erotics.
Okay, now if you didn't get it, just remember that child erotics, it's not depending on the physical appearance, but as she said, instead of the intention of how it's used. Now, the ninth question is for Griselda. How does infantile pornography affect minors?
The word of child pornography leaves figure as alarming as that every 7 minutes a minor is shown on the internet being sexually abused. A sexual exploiter is someone who unfairly benefits from a certain imbalance of power between himself and a person under 18 years old, with the intention of sexually exploiting that person, either for profit or for personal pleasures. This definition was formulated during the First World Congress against sexual exploitation of children. Sexually abuse is inflicted by someone who is in a position of power over the victim. It can be a family member, a member of the community where the victim lives, a teacher, or any other authority. Children, vulnerable and defenseless, are often the target and victims of adults who abuse of their power in order to take advantage of them. Sexual violence. The World Health Organization defines sexual violence as any sexual act that attempts to commit a sexual act, unwanted sexual comments or advances or actions to commercialize or otherwise use a person sexually through coercion, regardless of her relationship with the victim and in any setting, including the home and workplace. Individuals guilty of committing acts of sexual violence against children do so not simply to satisfy their desire to be intimate with the victim because they know that the children will be easier to control. Commercial sexual exploitation. Commercial sex is a problem in many countries around the world. It is illegal. It manifests itself in different ways, and it is difficult to measure. The expression sexual exploitation for commercial purpose may designate as it concerns children's sexual relations in which the child is paid for her service. However, this is often not the case, and rather it is the exploiter who gets the money. Regarding child pornography, certain exploiters do not hesitate to photograph, film, record sex scenes and involving minors, which are later sold for commercial gain. Factors that contribute to sexual exploitation of children are poverty. Poor children are more vulnerable than others because they believe that what is offered by the exploiter is a good opportunity to earn a living. Also, child trafficking networks. The development of communication technology allows the rapid spread of information around the world. As a consequence, internal and transitional networks of child traffickers have developed, facilitating that exploitation around the world. Also, humanitarian crises caused by armed conflicts or natural disasters. They aggravate the precarious situation in which the child find themselves. Homeless children, sometimes orphans who struggle day after day to survive, are sometimes easy prey for the individuals who wish to exploit them sexually. And last, a global development of sex industry. Such development leads to an increase in the amount, pattern, and scope of sexual exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Griselda. That was so very nice to hear. You explained it so well. Now, Carlos, let's talk about laws again. How is infantile pornography related to infantile abuse?
Well, primarily, it is important to distinguish child pornography from the more conventional understanding of the term pornography. Child pornography is a form of child sexual abuse explosion. Why is that? Well, and is graphically memorialize the sexual abuse of that child. Each child involved in the production of an image is a victim of sexual abuse. While some child sexual abuse images may depict children in great distress and sexual abuse, it is self-evident. Just because a child appears complacent doesn't mean that the sexual abuse didn't occur. In most child pornography cases, the abuse is not a one-time event, but rather ongoing victimization that progresses over months or even years. The abuse is not a time of event, but rather ongoing victimizations, and it is common for producers of child pornography to groom victims. What is groom? Well, groom is like a cultivating process of a relationship with a child, and the producers gradually sexualize the contact over the time. The grooming process fosters a false sense of growth and authority over the child in order to desensitize or break down a child's resistance to sexual abuse. Therefore, even if a child appears complacent in a particular image, it is important to remember that the sexual abuse may have started years before that image was created. Furthermore, child pornography suffer not just from the sexual abuse inflicted on them to produce pornography, but also from knowing that their images can be traded by others worldwide. The worst thing is that once an image is on the internet, it is irretrievable and can continue to circulate forever. The permanent record states that forever. Many victims of child pornography suffer from feeling of helplessness, fear and humiliation, and lack of control, given that their images are available for others to order in perpetuity. This materialize their existence, knowing that their images and that are on the internet. Unfortunately, emerging trends reveal an increase in the number of images depicting sadistic and violent child sexual abuse, and that increase in the number of images depicting very young children, including toddlers and infants. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you again, Carlos. But we're not going to talk about just how problematic is infantile pornography, but also here comes part of recommendations. So the 11th question is for Kelly. How should parents react to this situation?
First, don't panic. I have 2 teenagers, and I know that in this age, they have a lot of curiosity about this type of topics. But we have to know as a family that our body, our soul, our mind is temple of God. So everything that we watch, everything that we do, have to glorify God. Another thing that we have to explain to our children is that the pornography is not just naked pictures. It can start with an underwear advertisement in the social medias, in the television, newspaper, but also the pornography can start with a sexual joke, a sexual fantasy, or any sexual scene in a movie. Something that we have to teach to our children is how to discern between the good and the evil, because as our pastor said, everything, we have the freedom to do everything, but not everything is good for us.
Thank you, Kelly. Even if you're not a parent, it's necessary to know how to, as the question says, to react to the situation. Now, the last question is for Ashley. What are the measures that should be taken into account to prevent and avoid infantile pornography?
There are several measures that should be taken into account, but most of them are measures that parents should take. First, parents should talk to their children about sexuality, be open and accessible to answer any question that may come up. So the children don't need to look these things on the web or by their friends. And I want to emphasize something that my partner Giselle said, that pornography cannot be considered as a source of sexual education. Furthermore, parents should talk to their children about the internet and the dangers that lurks on the web and explain them the consequences of talking to strangers. In this type of situation, it is very important that there is confidence between the parents and the children. Parents should be aware of who they are talking, the children who they are talking to. If they are friends from the web or they are online friends from other countries, etc. Always place the computer in common areas of the house, not in isolated bedrooms or places, because that way you're giving the freedom to your children to go to the bedrooms and do these type of things. And also you can control its internet activity with calm and respect. Parents should provide with technological devices at an appropriate age in where they show a certain level of maturity and not from a very young age. Also, explain to your children that everything they post on social medias, on everything they post on Instagram, on WhatsApp is public, from a comment to a video. Finally, clarify your children that infantile pornography is a crime and that no one can ask them to take pictures to trigger themselves. Now, the recommendations we give to children is to be aware that every decision they make, whether a positive one or a negative one, will have its consequences in the future. To make a good use of their free time, to discern between right and wrong, and to value, care, and respect the expression of sexuality in their bodies. And lastly, to make a good use of social medias and the internet. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to emphasize in anything because you explained that very nicely. So now, thank you so much for your attention. I know that you have been sitting all this morning, but now it arrived the time for your questions. So if you have one, you can ask me.
Okay, students from 8th grade B and the 9th graders, if you have some questions related to the topic they just developed, you can ask them and they will answer to the questions with much pleasure. So just raise your hand if you have some questions. If you don't, okay, it's okay. Okay, Claudia Echeverria, ask your question.
Okay, my question is that, in your opinion, pornography can be considered as sex education?
Well, let me give you an example. Children, young people, even adults are like sponges because as humans, we tend to adapt incorrect patterns or habits since we develop learn through direct observations, absorbing from the environment all the information that surrounds us. Also that children and adolescents with a scare of sexual education and who are exposed to this type of content and also tend to consider certain risky sexual practice as normal, such as not using condoms, which led to numerous cases of unwanted pregnancies, and they adopt wrong images about the bodies of both sexes. So in my opinion, I think that it is not correct to consider a sexual education pornography.
I have a question for Ashley Diaz.
Answer.
Ashley Diaz, what is the most common type of pornography?
Well, the most common type of pornography is visual infantile pornography. And this is due to the fact how globalized our world is, we can say that way, and how technology has been developing. And nowadays, literally any children have at least a tablet or even a phone, which allows them to have access, an easy access to this type of content. So that's why visual infantile pornography is like the most common one nowadays. And we can say because of its easy access. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Is for Carlos. What national laws safeguard children for infantile pornography?
Okay, well, here in El Salvador, there are laws specifically for this. For example, some articles from El Código Penal de El Salvador state some laws against kidnapping children for sexual abuse or interacting some adults in a weird form of children. Thanks.
What recommendations would you give parents about social media?
I recommend the parents not allow their children to have social medias until they are in age when they can realize about the real risk in the social medias. And something that we can do to accelerate this process is to show them the news that are related to the dangers in the social medias. And through this process, we're not trying to scare them, we're just trying to make them realize how the world really works.
My question is, why some parents let their child be exposed and sexualized in social media?
Maybe I can answer it. I personally think that the last conference about how to raise children was helpful for that. And I can say that they let their children to be exposed because they think that's okay, and they think that they're going to be okay, letting their children to act how they want. They don't give them any restrictions or preventions about social media, or they don't even get sexual education, a quality sexual education. So I think that's why they're let their children.
Do you think that pornography changed the way that we see the opposite gender?
Well, if I can answer, yes, it can affect how we can see the other gender. But why? As I mentioned, the infantile pornography, it's not a good education of sexuality. Actually, it's against an education. It affects us to see the woman. I can say that you can the other gender, we can see that it is like to have sexual activity, and just for that, we lost the value of that she or he is a person, that she or he has feelings. So that is what I can say.
Why does the infantile pornography is so related to the child's erotics?
Well, it's related because it kind of influence on the view of pornography and influence on the children's, because both the children's are the subject to both studies. As I mentioned before, infantile pornography, it's kind of more explicit one, like instead of child erotics, which are materials that are non-pornographic character. So the relationship is that children are the subject in both ways, in both definitions, we can say.